There are many things that cause the questions of our time. The voice to Parliament is no different. What took place before such an idea was even a twinkle in the nation's eye, whether by words of man or handfuls of sand, we are here now, posed with a question. A proposed law to alter the Constitution to recognise the First Peoples of Australia by establishing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. Do you approve this proposed alteration? Over 250 leaders and elders endorsed the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which called for a voice. What is so important about the voice that groups all over the country, who like anyone disagree on many things, so strongly endorse this? Confidence comes not just from the heart, but from years of work. Although it encompasses our dreams and aspirations, the Voice's creation process is as rigorous and shrewd as any other piece of statecraft. Recommendations are detailed. Members will be selected by Indigenous communities through 3 different methods depending on place. There'll be 2 members for every state and territory, including the Torres Strait, plus an extra member for remote parts of the country. That's just the tip of the iceberg.
Thomas Mayo is my name. I'm a Kororeg Kugagal Arabamle man, born on Larrakia country, and I've been campaigning for the last 6 years for a voice to Parliament enshrined in the Constitution. Well, in many ways we've been campaigning for a voice in the Constitution for over 100 years. We've established voices before in the 1920s, the Australian Aboriginal Progressive Association, the Aboriginal Advancement League, FCATSI, and governments have established voices as well for Indigenous people, the NAC and the NACC, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission. But each of those voices have been taken away by a subsequent government, and so we've learnt that we need to enshrine a voice in the Constitution. Constitutional recognition is something that has also been talked about for decades now. Our Constitution is silent on over 60,000 years of history and culture, the existence of Indigenous people. And so what we are proposing at this referendum now is to recognise Indigenous people in the Constitution by guaranteeing us a voice, an advisory committee to have a say.
And Tom isn't alone. He is just one out of many people who support the voice. This participatory, democratic advisory body will only come about through the wishes of most Australians in all states. Committees on medicine, environment, and even space science exist in Australia to great practical effect. Having a permanent committee of people who are able to directly advise on what their community needs, it's just logical. How much time has been spent designing the voice?
And no doubt the two are linked on the basis of recognition.
The design process for the voice can trace itself as far back as 2010, where the expert panel on constitutional recognition was established following a bipartisan commitment by the major parties to constitutional recognition at the 2007 election.
It included politicians, representatives from the Liberal Party, the Labor Party, the Green, the Business Council of Australia and the Law Council of Australia, Indigenous leaders such as Pat Dodson, Marcy Langton and Noel Pearson.
The report by the expert panel was finished in 2012, exploring the options for constitutional change. The world is full of scarred pasts. The traumas of generations can stretch back decades, centuries, even millennia. Without reconciliation, its consequences can lay claim to many people from all walks of life. Reconciliation is a mean feat, but when an opportunity to do it appears, it's our responsibility, among our many other responsibilities, to play our part in letting that happen. We even have proven examples in the rest of the world. The happiest country, Norway, collaboratively with its Nordic neighbours, created the Sami Parliament. This body is responsible for its people's development, language, teaching aids, and assisting the government with programs. New Zealand is a closer example, having a Maori treaty since 1840, and Makarata, the Waitangi Tribunal, a commission to look into its maintenance since 1975. A treaty can be many things. At the core of all treaties, on top of all it's designed to do, is acknowledgement.
This bill will establish an act of recognition, acknowledging the unique and special place of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples.
Following the
of our
2010 expert panel suggestions, the Parliament in 2012 created a select committee to find steps towards successful constitutional recognition.
The expert panel consisted of a range of respected and accomplished individuals to work out how best to recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians in the Constitution.
This included public hearings around the country.
They talked to more than 4,600 people in more than 250 meetings, 84 locations across the country, and received more than 3,500 submissions.
That led in 2015 to the Kirribilli Statement, and ultimately Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull reported to the House that he'd established the Referendum Council.
Informed by both an expert panel and select committee, several dozen Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders attended a meeting with the Prime Minister and opposition leader in what was called the Kirribilli Statement.
That led to the House asking for the consultation to happen, where there were 18 regional dialogues.
In it, they pushed the government to act in the principles that would eventually become the Voice referendum.
Yes, the Uluru Statement from the Heart. I came together with over 250 fellow Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the heart of the nation in 2017, and we considered those lessons from the past that I mentioned. We also looked at the other statements and petitions that had been dismissed and ignored, and learnt that if we are to make another statement, if we were to make a proposition about a way to improve this country and to get better outcomes, we needed to make that to the Australian people. So the Uluru Statement is a very special national consensus, very unique, and it really has set us on the path to this fork in the road at this referendum, where we can say yes or no to accepting its invitation.
After committees and panels pushed the government towards referendum, the Referendum Council kick-started a nationwide consultation process. Starting in Hobart, where Musselrome Bay man Craig Everett opened the meeting among the outer city bush of Risdon Cove. 2 months later in Broome, the disparate array of Pilbara and Kimberley delegates pushed substantive reforms for First Nation building. The Dubbo Dialogue desired delegates, proposing an elected representative body. The fire of unity and activism was Darwin's determination. In Perth, from the southwest to the Gascoyne, delegates of Borlu backed a treaty. Sydney sung New South Wales's wishes for recognition and its meanings. Melbourne murmured against minimal action. Cairns covered many groups, sharing a history of abuse, who wished for a commission of truth. At Australia's heart, the Ross River Dialogue desired self-determination. Adelaide aimed for deepening reform. Brisbane, the Torres Straits, and finally, Canberra, while all information gathered was put on display. Democracy is not just about elections. Since the times of revolution, it's been about the right to participate in your community and country. Voice, treaty, truth. It's impossible to explain and summarize many years into 3 simple words. But everything needs a title. The Uluru Statement, a form of art keeping in style with the Yirrkala Bark Petition and the Barunga Statement, is signed by Indigenous leaders across the country, calling for a constitutionally protected First Nations voice, and a fair Makarrata agreement-making procedure. It was released on the 26th of May 2017 by delegates to the First Nations National Constitutional Convention near Uluru. Although the changes to the Constitution, due to its very nature, does not include them, there is no doubt that every process and detail needed to run the body of the voice is ready. Disadvantage was a major concern, as it tied deeply into the primary goal of the co-design document, which was figuring out representation and accountability. Membership is mentioned nearly 200 times in the co-design document. Not only do we know how many members should be in the voice, 24, we know how they'll be selected, what their role will be, how they directly tie to the grassroots, and why it ended up structured this way. Members will be picked by A, collectively from local voices in their state, B, determined by relevant representative assemblies formed by local voices where they exist, or C, some combination of both. These are all either a direct election or voted by direct representatives. The Indigenous co-design process paper is 272 pages formed over 4 months of consultation. It was the final step in designing a proposal. It was the details, answering questions like how to tie in existing bodies, incorporate local and regional voices, transition plans, consultation and engagement, recommendations and historical contexts, the works. A co-design process is a staple of statecraft. Affected citizens and key stakeholders come together, find problems, and collaborate on solutions. A long-time part of government, it allows projects to be led by and agreed by those affected directly by a policy. It still has weaknesses, such as relying on availability of people, willingness to participate, and difficulty in building consensus with large groups. A lot can be said of something that survives a co-design.
The Uluru Statement from the Heart holds practical local change, not a conflict between two identities, but an embrace of both for the betterment of both. When we have power over our destiny, our children will flourish. For every Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander child, they will walk in two worlds, and their culture will be a gift to their country. Gift to their country. Think about those words, the chance to flourish. Even in that moment, there is still that spirit of generosity to others, the offer of a gift to us all. The understanding that both our worlds have so much to gain. The genius of the Uluru Statement from the Heart and all the elders and leaders and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who poured their hopes and aspirations and effort and goodwill into it is that it doesn't just articulate the noble goal of a better future. It offers Australia the practical means and the path to achieve it. My government supports the Uluru Statement from the Heart and its call, a vehicle for real and practical progress of Indigenous Australians, by Indigenous Australians, for Indigenous Australians in every part of our nation, the regions and remote communities, big cities and the Torres Strait Islands, giving Parliament and government the advice to drive health, education, employment and housing. That's what The Voice is about, advice, and the perspective and experience of the people on the ground. This is what voting yes represents. And that is why today I can promise all of you and all Australians there will be no delaying or deferring of this referendum. We will not deny the urgency of this moment. We will not kick the can down the road. We will not abandon substance for symbolism or retreat to platitudes at the expense of progress. An 8-year gap in life expectancy in the land of the fair go. A suicide rate twice as high in the lucky country. Shocking rates of disease in a nation with some of the world's best healthcare. Only 4 out of 19 closing the gap targets on track. Surely no leader can honestly say that is good enough. The Uluru Statement from the Heart is also such a clear and practical appeal to the head. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are seeking for the better future that both will deliver for all of us. Thanks very much.
23rd of March 2023, the Prime Minister released the design principles of The Voice. This is essentially what The Voice is meant to accomplish. The Voice will give independent advice to the Parliament and government. The Voice will be chosen by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people based on the wishes of local communities. The Voice will be representative of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities, gender balanced and include youth. The Voice will be empowering, community-led, inclusive, respectful, and culturally informed. The Voice will be accountable and transparent. The Voice will work alongside existing organisations and traditional structures. The Voice will not have a program delivery function. The Voice will not have a veto power. Knights in Shining Armour has done many videos covering the Acts of Parliament, including a weekly summary of the Robodebt Royal Commission. Tell us about the Constitution Alteration Bill, Knights.
Thanks for that, Loomhigh. Before you can have a referendum in Australia, Parliament needs to pass a bill. And in March 2023, the Constitution Alteration Bill for The Voice was introduced.
I present the Constitution Alteration, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice 2023 and the explanatory memorandum.
On the same day, Parliament agreed to establish a joint select committee to review the bill. This was a small group of politicians from different parties that held 5 public hearings and considered 270 submissions. When the committee released their report, it had one recommendation: that the bill be passed unamended. And that is exactly what happened. The bill passed by an absolute majority in both the House of Representatives and the Senate. This confirmed the wording of the constitutional change that Australians will vote on.
Now, with a referendum without a second to spare before arriving, how do we get it to actually succeed? The YouTuber Sorman has done a video showing every referendum in Australian history, so I asked him to explain it. Take it away, Sorman.
Thanks, Loomhigh. So in Australia, a referendum is conducted in a very similar way to how elections are conducted, in which Australians will be mandated to head to their local polling booths. However, rather than voting on who will represent them in the House and Senate, they will instead be given a paper slip with a proposed constitutional change, which they can then respond with either a yes or a no. Once polls are closed, these responses are tallied across all the states and territories to see if the change has been approved by Australians. For a change to be approved, it must have the majority of Australians as well as the majority of states be in favour. If either of these two majorities have not been met, the referendum will fail. To date, Australia has voted in 44 separate referendums. Of these, only 8 have successfully been able to achieve both the majority of Australian and state support to pass. In fact, of these 8 referendums which have passed, all but one passed with every single state supporting the change. Only the 1910 states debt referendum saw a disgruntled New South Wales try to unsuccessfully block the referendum against the waves of support from the rest of the country. While only one referendum with national support has passed with every state in favour, 5 which did have national support failed due to the lack of state support. The closest of these 5 had to be the 1946 marketing referendum, which came just under 10,000 South Australians away from winning. Back to you, Loomhigh.
And that's it. On the 14th of October is election day for the referendum, and if you want to vote early, there'll be pre-poll places in various parts of the country. Goodbye and good luck.